The Earley Show will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our 24/7 virtual receptionist team.
I've been utilizing Answering Legal for my firm since 2015, and truth be told, it was a game changer for me. I can be anywhere, and I'm getting my phones answered by Answering Legal. A strategic partner, as I call Answering Legal, provides a great reward. What is that reward? It's time. Time for whatever I want to do. As a private practitioner, I would highly recommend Answering Legal to other private practitioners. Now, every call goes answered.
All right, hello everyone. We have a real treat because today we have Ali Awad, the CEO lawyer. He has built up a very impressive PI law firm in Georgia in just a few short years. So I really wanted to get on a call with him, chop it up, and just understand a little bit about what Ali is doing in such an impressive way. I feel like I know we're gonna learn a lot from this. I'm gonna learn a lot from this. That's why I asked him to be on the call. So you, the listener, our intention of getting together today, he and I, is to give you value, help move the needle in your practice, do a lot differently, do business differently. And so we're just really excited to have you. Ali, thank you so much for making the time today.
Chris, I'm going to challenge you to ask me some difficult questions because off the record, before we even turned the camera on, turned the mics on, you said, "Hey, I'm going to go a little deep. I know you just extended your family and you've added more people and there's a lot going on." So my goal here is for people to get value from the conversation. I don't consider myself a successful person. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. But there might be an accidental brilliance from time to time. I might say something that's going to resonate with people. And so you have full permission to go all in on your questions. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for that. It means a lot. So again, welcome to the show. I want everyone to get your pencils ready. We're going to be getting into some high level stuff, right? And how a law firm can grow and do special things, grow great culture, great team, just doing things differently, a little disruptive to move the needle even more. So I really am excited to chop it up with you, Ali. So we had John Morgan on episode 1, and we got deep with John. He really peeled back the curtain. So I want to just kind of chat with you. And again, how are you doing what you're doing? And it's obviously very different. I'm just hopeful that someone's going to really take notice of what you're doing and again take notes. I wanted to bring you on because we have a lot in common. You're a little younger than me, but we both are hustlers. We get after it. We're entrepreneurs. So we both work hard. Neither of us were born rich or privileged. We both have a passion and drive to grow special law firms, right? And again, we're both focused on culture. Without culture, you're gonna fail as a law firm owner, right? Or be mediocre at best. So we're both culture guys. We're both givers, right? Before the call, you're talking about how you give, right? And you weren't bragging. You were just talking about how you give, right? And that is big. That's big level, big time thinking that I always try to incorporate myself, right? Giving rather than taking. So I want to hear about your upbringing. I know you're born, was it 1990?
Yes.
I think you were born in the U.S., but then you went back abroad, but you came back. So just talk about your roots and how you started, at birth.
I was born July 5th, 1990. And by 1995, I had started my first business of selling pictures of Dragon Ball Z characters. My dad was an engineer. We were living in Dalton, Georgia. And he was one of the few people that had a color printer at home because he needed it for his engineering drawings, architectural drawings for his work. So I'd go home and I'd see this, Macintosh computers back in the day when they had the big bubble computer in the back and they were all these different colors. This was the 90s. And the internet wasn't really well known at the time. So you could go online, Yahoo was the thing. You type in yahoo.com. And I'm thinking, well, I want to see Dragon Ball Z characters. So I type in like Dragon Ball Z. I type in Goku. I type in Krillin. I type in all these different characters. And I distinctly remember the search having like 5 to 7 images that would come in. Because that's how unused the internet was at that time. So think about it. You go online, you type in Google right now, you can type in anything you could possibly think of on Google, and you're going to get millions and millions of responses. Whereas when I was typing in Dragon Ball Z, I'd get like 7 pictures. So this was the early stages of my entrepreneurial spirit, where I'd go online and I would print off pictures of these Dragon Ball Z characters, and I'd have black and white ones and I'd have color ones. I'd sell the black and white ones for like $1 or $2. The color ones would be $5. And I would cut the URL off the bottom of the sheet because I didn't want anyone to know my source. This is how my entrepreneurial journey started. And since then, I think something clicked where I knew leverage in knowledge is what's going to make you financially successful. If you could arbitrage the knowledge that you have over other people, you can win at any game. And so this started evolving. And within a couple of years, I started playing with Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading cards. And I'm going to sound like a super nerd here, but like for me, this was just something fun. You know, as a kid in elementary school, this is something fun to do. And I'd go to Walnut Square Mall and I'd go to these competitions and I'd learn how to trade with people. And I started kind of testing the market to see where was the highest profit margin at 8 years old for these Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading cards. And I learned that the 5 cards of Exodia, the 5 pieces that make this massive character, are the most sought after pieces. So this is a true story. I legit went into business with my younger brother. I was 8, he was 7. And I said, hey, we need to start investing together to be able to collect these 5 cards of Exodia. And I specifically remember in 3rd grade in Mr. Kittle's class in 4th period, I sold these 5 cards of Exodia to this kid named Lionel Reynoso for $100. It's the first time I ever made $100 in my life. When I saw Benjamin Franklin smiling at me, I crumbled up the paper and I held it in a fist in my pocket, and I put my hand in my pocket and kept it there from 4th period to 5th period to 6th period to 7th period to the bus ride home. I held on to the paper the whole time, and from time to time I'd just like move my fingers a little bit just to make sure old Ben didn't run away from me. And when I finally got home, I opened it up with all of its glory, and I realized, dang, I got to split this 60-40 with my younger brother. And so I had to go to the bank, right? My mom was the bank. She charged us a 20% exchange fee. So that $100 went from 80, and then I had to split that up. I think I ended up keeping like, $40-45 as a result. But it was so empowering, man, to be able to make $100 on my own. And at the time, we were poor, man. My parents were immigrants. They were not citizens at the time. We were free lunches. We were, every sort of government assistance that you could possibly think of. We were public school buses. And this is the norm. I'm not saying that there's anything bad about this. I'm just saying that this was the standard. This was the life that we had. It was the tiny house where I had my 3 brothers and all 4 of us in one bedroom. We all stayed in the same bedroom together. It was getting used to seeing cockroaches in your house because the pesticide spray is too expensive, and we'll use vinegar from time to time if we need to. It was going to the United Grocery Outlet and negotiating with the cashier when my mom in her limited English trying to tell the cashier that tomatoes are 29 cents a pound at Walmart and you should match the price here, even though she knows these are organic tomatoes and they're going to be a little bit bigger and plumper, and she's trying to get the same deal here. It was never being allowed to get that candy at the checkout line, or having to figure out a way to pay for things at a very early stage. And so that $100 meant so much more than just the money. It meant a way out of what was an otherwise difficult upbringing. And that mindset sort of continued all the way through middle school, high school, college. And I had 7 different businesses before I became an attorney.
So I hope there are a lot of writer-downers in there. I hope people are taking notes, because what I hear is curiosity. I hear, audacity, entrepreneurial, thoughts spawning. You're just sort of like coming into your own at a very, very, very young age. Frankly, it's very immature at 8 years of age, right? So, are you the middle child?
I'm the middle child. Yeah, I got 2 older brothers. So oldest brother born in 87, second brother born in 88. Probably a miscarriage somewhere between me and, my older brother, because my mom was just popping them out like back to back. Between me and my younger brother is 11 months. So talk about like 4 boys in 4 years. And then I have 2 other sisters. So there's 6 of us.
So what I find really interesting is, as far as I see, you and your siblings are all very successful, right? Which I think is really inspiring, because you talk about cockroaches, you talk about adversity, you talk about making something out of nothing. That's really impressive to me. Where you are right now, where your siblings are. I think that's a testament to your parents. I want to ask you about your father, right? I've heard you mention before, he only liked to speak Arabic in the home. If you spoke English, he just responded right in Arabic, right? Can you tell me why he wanted it that way? Because I think that's really interesting.
Look, if you want to teach your kids your foreign language, your mother tongue, you have to force them to speak that language at home. That means that if you want your kids growing up speaking Spanish, you want to hold on to your Mexican culture, you want to hold on to that Spanish language, you want to hold on to the R's when you roll it off the tongue, right? The nuances of your language and your culture, you have to enforce it, because kids are going to look for the easy way out. They don't know what's in their best interest at a young age. So for us to learn how to speak Arabic, not living in any Middle Eastern country growing up and living in the US my entire life, the reason I'm fluent in Arabic is because my dad would literally kick my ass if I did not speak Arabic at home. And he would not even respond to me if I asked him a question or I needed help with something. The only exclusion was, Baba, what is this word in Arabic? And he would translate it for you. And that's the only way that you could speak English, is if you didn't know the word in Arabic. So that's how we learned Arabic, and that's how I intend to raise my children too, because I think culture and religion and this identity is what makes us unique. And I'm not going to have it watered down because it's just a new generation. And on top of that, every morning we would wake up and go to Fajr prayer at the mosque. So every single morning, my dad would take my 3 brothers and I to the mosque on McAfee Street. It was, half a mile down the street, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning in the hood. We would go and pray. We learned how to lead prayer at an early age, learned how to read in Arabic, learned all the different variations of reading styles in Arabic. And this was a big part of our identity, because for us, and for me specifically, religion is a guideline for life. My religion is a conglomeration of everything you could possibly experience in your life. And it's a rule book for how to deal with those situations. From birth to marriage to children to death and everywhere in between, there's issues that you're going to face. There are problems that you're going to have. There are friends and enemies and family issues. We experience the same things over and over again. They're just labeled in different ways. So understanding your religion and having the ability to speak your language, I think, establishes your identity, and it makes you into a strong person. And I think that was the main difference between me and my other Muslim friends and Arab friends whose parents weren't as strict on them. They weren't investing in their children every single morning and taking them to the mosque and teaching them how to read and forcing them to speak Arabic at home. Because I tell you, that is my biggest strength right now. What I used to think was a vulnerability and a disadvantage because I spoke a little bit differently or I didn't have as strong of an English language, that is my strength. And it evolved into this, I would say it's just this dedication and perseverance that is just different from other people. You're disciplined as a kid. They say that if you discipline your children, you can pamper your grandchildren. If you pamper your children, you're going to have to discipline your grandchildren. And I think that was one of the things that my dad did. And I'm realizing now with children, it's hard, but it's just tough love, because I want you to be successful. I want you to have a great life, and I want you to be able to take care of yourself. And you'll be surprised. By age 7, you could have your kids doing a lot of the heavy work and the heavy lifting at home. But we think that you got to wait until they're 16, 17, 18. It's not in their best interest. It's not.
Put him to work.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. I mean, my kid is, about to be, 2.5, 3. I already bought him his LSAT books. We're ready to rock and roll.
You're not messing around. I like that. So
It's discipline, man. It really is discipline at an early age.
so let me ask you, I don't know if you can really even answer it, but do you think you would be successful today if you didn't have that adversity back in the day? The level of adversity.
Adversity was my life growing up. So I can't say that not having adversity would have made me any different. I think not having good parents would have kept me from being successful. Not having discipline at an early life would have not made me successful. Not doing martial arts and learning to go into a dojo at age 9, and if you act up, you hit the floor and do 10 push-ups, and if you don't like it, they have a stick in their hand and they're like smacking the ground, smacking your feet and telling you to get down and do some push-ups. One-on-one combat, fighting people in the ring, just you and your mindset and your abilities at a young age, learning the importance of competition, not allowing yourself to go anything less than first place. I think all that is important. I think I had to learn that the value of myself and other human beings is not directly related to their income, because when you grow up poor, you start thinking that your value and other people's value is related to their financial status. And I had to unlearn those bad habits. But I wouldn't change it, because that learning process kind of allowed me to mature and realize that money is important, but integrity, discipline, passion, charisma, happiness, those are more important. And I know we're kind of veering off the path here a little bit, but yeah, man, I wouldn't change my upbringing for anything. I think that's what made me who I am. Not even down to the exact place where I grew up in Dalton, Georgia, around a bunch of Mexicans, because I grew up around a bunch of Mexicans. That's just where it was. We were the only Arab family in a Mexican community, so that's why I grew up speaking Spanish. I would not change that, because today over 50% of my law firm is Spanish speaking. Today we represent thousands of Latino families in Georgia. Today my Spanish is the reason we can represent underserved communities. I wouldn't change a thing.
So this is another thing we have in common. So we both had adversity. Mine was sort of a trauma adversity. I had a very successful father who abandoned us and he became homeless. He was a successful guy, but he lost everything. So I have some trauma that drives me, and you have adversity. But the average bear, when they're in that type of environment, there's typically failure in life. It's rare that someone achieves level of success that you have, especially at an early age, right? So I think it's really commendable. It's a multifaceted approach to life that you're incorporating that's brought you here. But I think you and I are outliers, statistically at least, right? That when you come from challenge, you generally have a challenging life. So I think that we both truly have in common carving a better life for ourselves, our family, creating jobs, right? I mean, this is value. It's not about dough. You talk about passion, right? I think I think the dough comes when you chase your passion, not necessarily chase money. When you lean into what you're good at, your passion, what you care about, you have that fire under your ass, the money just comes, I feel like. But that's kind of how
I,
I see it.
you know, I don't think I'm an outlier. I think there is a positive correlation between immigrants from countries that are war-ridden, famine-stricken, and just a difficult life in general. Immigrants from Palestine, immigrants from Libya, immigrants from Syria, states and countries that experience real, raw terror and war. And you come here and you're bitching and complaining because you got to work 40 hours a week. Get out of here, dude. Life is still easy here. But when you see that there are real problems, like if you have the ability to go outside of your house and not be legitimately worried about your life, you're winning. From there, the world is your oyster. And it's an important conversation for the Black community too, because there's a lot of African Americans that experience this type of hatred and terror and difficult life here in America. And I've always said that the plight of African Americans in the US is very similar to Palestinians overseas, because we know what it's like to be treated like second class citizens. And we don't have a choice of just sitting here and complaining and woe is me, I'm going to, be sad about my situation. You just pull yourself up and get back to work. I think the main thing that differentiates me, the main reason why I appreciate the life and the success that I have, is because I've seen what my friends and family experience in the Middle East. And the only difference is they don't have a US citizenship. They don't have the ability to start a business from scratch or get funding and get credit and live a life and have their own home and cars and complete freedom. They don't have that. They're just as smart, they're just as athletic, they're just as ambitious and passionate, but they don't have opportunity. So gratitude is the difference. I don't care how you grew up. If you realize that you're still better off than so many other people, boil it down to just, do you still have your limbs? Do you still have all of your faculties? Can you still function as a normal human being? And from there, you work your way up. And so I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful because I could have just been born overseas without a US citizenship. And the likelihood of that was very high because I have 100 plus cousins with the same last name that don't live here. So this isn't an anomaly that I became successful and built a business that is actually working. This is an obligation. I had to do it. It would be a shame if my family and friends had this opportunity and just squandered it.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I think that's very inspiring, because there's never, poor me, it's always the opposite. Like, your hair's on fire, right? You're not gonna let anything not be fully utilized that you've been given, right? And so
Well, look, let's talk about you, Chris, for a second. You said you had a difficult upbringing with your parents, and I'm sure a lot of people would say, and your dad left. How old were you?
I was about your age when you were a budding capitalist. I was about 7, and he became homeless in the streets of Manhattan. I mean, like, he was in a skyscraper, self-employed kind of big shot, and then alcohol is real, and it just
So your dad became an alcoholic when you were 7 years old, became essentially homeless, left you and your mom. Do you have any siblings?
I do. Yes, I do. And I can't share other stories, but in my experience, it's been me particular as an individual getting out. So that was my particular adversity, right? We all have unique adversity. That's my perspective of challenge.
But there's two schools of thought here. There's either the person that grew up watching their dad become a drunk and a homeless person and someone who did not live up to their potential, and they think I'm destined to be that same way. And then there's people that say, I hate that happened to a man that I love, and I will never let that happen to me. And so I don't think it's necessarily an anomaly. I think it's a 50-50 shot. It just boils down to, are you grateful for the opportunity that you've been given? And are you going to learn from other people's mistakes, or are you the type of person that needs to make the mistakes yourself to learn from them?
That's fair. That's a humble take. I think it's a sober take. You mentioned gratitude, so I think that's a healthy perspective that it's inspiring to me, and I'm no doubt it's inspiring to others. Just, I want to get more, but I'm curious about, you had a lot of jobs as a kid, you mentioned. Now, I believe you
Not jobs, businesses.
Businesses. You had businesses.
My dad had a rule. He would never allow us to clock in and work for someone else.
Well, fair, but I can ask you a question. You were making money. So,
yeah.
But your dad, I believe, when you were young, was going abroad. The money is that fair, or did you see some of it?
Okay, so here's the story of how I made millions of dollars as a kid and had nothing to show for it. At age 5, I started my entrepreneurship journey selling Dragon Ball Z pictures of characters that I would print online at home, cut off the URL, and sell them at school. That evolved into selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards by age 8. And then by age 9, I discovered this thing called eBay, where I started buying and selling electronics online. within a couple of years, I started getting really into the internet. I discovered this auction website called Ubid. I'd go on ubid.com where I would buy electronics and sell them either in the retail store that my brothers and I opened or back on eBay. And it got to a point where the very first Kicker L7 subwoofer that I bought for $74 on Ubid, I realized there was an arbitrage of selling it retail for $250 where this could be a massive profitable opportunity. And I would just take the money that I would make from selling online, rinse and repeat. And one day I walked into our shack, which we call the shop, that was attached to our 2,000 square foot brick home on Fifth Avenue in Dalton, Georgia. And I had this tower of Kicker L7 subwoofers. I'm probably 13 years old at the time. This was tens of thousands of dollars worth of inventory. The problem is when you're 12, 13 years old, you're not old enough to have a bank account or understand how these things work or have credit cards and all these other things. So all of the accounts were in my dad's name. And anytime money would come into the account, my dad would take the money and give it to essentially his family. And the reason for that is because, and by the way, the way this got to millions of dollars is because I took those tens of thousands of dollars worth of electronics and then parlayed it into Vossen wheels, parlayed it into a air purifier business that I had where I would sell these air purifiers, portable welders. I sold thousands of polo shirts from the trunk of my car and online. By the time I got to law school, I bought an apartment complex using credit cards. I was flipping cars every opportunity that I had. And I had this graphics company for about 7 years in the interim in between. So if you lived in Dalton in the 90s and 2000s and you saw a Joker's audio sticker anywhere, that was me. I made that sticker and that was the reason for the success of that business. But I'm not blaming my dad for squandering the cash that we earned. In fact, his dad passed away when he was 24 years old. And he had 10 other siblings that he needed to take care of, 10 younger siblings that he needed to take care of. So from age 24 to 33, my dad's primary obligation was his siblings and his family. And he would get them over from Dubai and the Middle East and Palestine one by one to come to the U.S., get their college degree, get their apartment, get their house, get married, start their families. And so by the time my dad was in his 30s and he started a family of his own, it became second nature to just help out everyone that was overseas. Because if you got to the US, you won the lottery. You won. You're here. It doesn't matter what happens. You can walk outside. There was a time in the 90s and the 2000s where you could go to a job, start work within an hour. And if you didn't like your job by lunchtime, you quit and go find another job in the afternoon. And this was the land of opportunity. So all the money that was made during that time for me was just a learning cost of learning how to develop a business of buying and selling online, of finding clients on the internet, of digital marketing. There was a period where I was just selling a ridiculous amount of stuff on Craigslist. And I learned the importance of having capital letters in your title, on your description, having good quality pictures with good lighting. I learned that, you can, if you don't have a serious enough description, people are not going to think that this is a product that's worth buying. People are wary of buying from businesses and companies. So you have to set it up as if you're selling as an individual, even though you have a company. And you learn all these different nuances of buying and selling online. But if you were to put all this under one umbrella, I learned digital marketing and online sales for the first 20 years of my life. So by the time I got to law school, and by the way, when I was in law school, I was still working in the car audio shop. I was working 2 legal jobs to pay my way through school. I got a GRA position and a scholarship to pay for law school. By the time I started my law practice, I already had a 7-figure work ethic. I just had a 3-figure budget to play with. You see, so life didn't happen to me, it happened for me. Life happened for my dad. Maybe it was one of the better things that happened to him, that he was forced to take care of his siblings. Because had it not been for that, my dad would have probably stayed in Chicago where he had this good engineering gig. He had a good job in Chicago as an engineer. He probably would have just focused on himself and making money and starting his own family. Who knows where his siblings and all of my cousins would have been at the time. Who knows if I would have had the same sort of ambition and drive that I have today, because we were forced to grow up poor. And I definitely would not have had the same financial awareness of learning the importance of saving money and investing it and not spending it foolishly. So I might have made millions of dollars throughout my childhood and my teenage years and my early 20s. But if that was the cost of my education, that was a really good deal.
Let me ask, so I heard you talk about, 9/11. You're about 11 years old, 9/11 hits, and then you start getting a lot of hate. Now, tell me if I'm wrong. I thought that's what you said at some point. And that kind of toughened you up more. It's like more adversity. The skin gets a little more leathery, right? It's like a little more resistance. What was that like as a very young boy at that time, as you're, working and hustling and trying to do something big, right? For just a young child, and then this happens, and people are saying mean stuff to you. What was that like?
You know, when you have a bad habit that you've been doing for a very long time, you start convincing yourself that it's okay because you've been doing it for so long. I developed the bad habit of thinking racism was okay at a young age, where people would make fun of my mom's clothing. They'd make fun of our language. They'd make fun of our religion, the hijab that my mom and my sisters and my aunts wore. And I just kind of let it roll off at a very young age, and because it was normal, because you're different. You're not like everyone else here. You are a guest in this city, in this country. So if people say bad things about you, it's okay. That's just part of life. And I didn't realize how deeply rooted the racism was in Dalton until I got out and just started remembering all the negative low points in my life, how it was fueled by other people's racism. I remember just being at a stoplight randomly. This redneck in an S10 pulls down his window, spits out his tobacco, and says, "Go back to your country." And I don't know why that specific scene sticks out in my head, but I feel like I had so many of those situations. And I think that was maybe the first time where I thought, why would someone hate us just because of how we look? So when 9/11 came around, there was always, that one kid that's the bully that would make fun of you in school and say, "Hey, why are your uncles killing us?" And, you're in fifth grade. You don't know any better. You just kind of let it roll off. And to be honest, at that time, it didn't really bother me because I was so used to it already. It bothered my teachers way more because they're like, "You're living with this, and it's not allowed for them to," like, they were to not allow racism. But I had such thick skin by that time that I learned that I'm an immigrant. I'm a guest here. I don't get a say-so. I have to let my ambition and drive and success be the reason why people respect me and nothing else. This also happened in martial arts because I went to a Taekwondo studio that was a Christian school for all intents and purposes because they had all these things with Bible verses. In fact, as part of our black belt test, you had to memorize the first Psalm of the Bible. I still remember it to this day, 20 plus years later. This was normal. So I just thought that my religion and my language and my culture, this is something I'll keep for myself. And this is so good. It's such an amazing thing that I can deal with all the other hatred from other people. It's almost like my religion was my refuge. Like, I could deal with anything as long as I have God. And maybe that's the reason why we didn't care about what other people thought about us, how much they hated us, because my dad taught us that we have our religion, we have our belief, we have our faith, and if you have that, it's all you need.
Yeah, so that's another thing we have in common because it sounds like your parents sort of, as you were growing, right, they're, building up their young boy, right, amongst other children, obviously, right. So there's only so much attention that they could put on you, as everyone else had to get attention as well. So my point is that I look at like so I talk about my story. I look at it as like my mom pressed the right buttons and like moved the dials the right way, so I didn't go on a path of failure. But there's a lot of like volition and choices that we make as people, right? We can go any way we want to go. But it sounds like my mom, like your parents, the right buttons were, the environment was chaos. It was a little chaotic, little, very adverse. However, there was enough normalcy where you could thrive. You had a platform to thrive. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
No, I would not say my life was normal in any way, man. My upbringing was not normal. It was normal for kids to have their car in high school, where when you turn 16, your parents would get you a car, and that would be the car that you drive. It was not normal to drive whatever car was in the mechanic shop at the time because your dad had a used car dealership, and you would take these cars so that you can determine whether they had any mechanical issues or errors as part of the work, because work was the primary thing that we did as kids. Everything else and leisure was secondary. The first vacation we ever took was when I was 16 years old, and we went to Disney World. And the reason that we were able to get it was because I found this company that was selling timeshares. And as long as you sit for a timeshare presentation, you can get these Disney World tickets. I negotiated and found, I went to like a Hotwire or some other website to get the Motel 8 or the Super 8 motel for a super cheap price. We drove down to Florida in this big ass van, just loaded 8 people in there. And it turned out to be one of the best vacations we've ever taken because it was the only one we'd ever taken up until that point.
Yeah.
So there was no normalcy, man. I was going to Vegas when I was 15 years old to negotiate with electronics manufacturers to sell equipment in our car audio stores. That's not normal.
No.
Yeah, I think the only normalcy, in quotes, was you have siblings and those are your best friends and you look out for each other. And I think that's the only extent of normalcy where, like, you got your religion, you got your family, everything else doesn't matter. We're all in this together. And so when you made the comment earlier about, all of your siblings are successful, I think it's because we hated so much how we were treated and how hard we had to work and how far behind the 8 ball we were as kids that we never want to go back to that. I wouldn't call that normal, though.
Well, fair. So this is really interesting because I feel like you have there's some swagger, but you're also a humble guy. So you got this mix of like hey, you think highly of yourself, and you should, right? Or else you're not gonna be successful unless you think small. You're thinking big. You're confident. You have confidence, but also you're grounded. Right? You haven't forgotten where you started, and I think that's really important. And that to me is success because you're talking, it's not about money like we said, right? It's about like, integrity and just, family and doing the best with what you got, right? Because that would be, like you said, that would be a travesty to squander 1% of the gifts you had, right? And were given, right? Even though a lot of things you weren't given, but you weren't going to let things derail you. I think that's interesting. And I think that's healthy. You don't want to go, you don't want to go too far either way. You don't want to be so humble or so arrogant. Somewhere in the middle, I feel like that's, if I'm hearing you correctly, feeling what you're saying accurately, I feel like that's kind of where you landed. It's healthy mindset.
Yeah, I think I definitely started more on the arrogant side because you have to have thick skin. You have to have thick skin to grow up as an immigrant in the U.S., and you have to not allow racism to hurt you. But I was definitely arrogant. I'm not going to say I was definitely arrogant in the beginning, and it took me meeting some like really influential, affluent people that are super successful, way ahead of me, that taught me the game. And even to this day, I like hanging around people that are at a much higher level because it kind of reinvigorates your fire.
For sure. We got to always level up, right? or else what's the point of this? So fast forwarding a little bit, right? Talked about sort of your upbringing, then you hit law school. If I'm not mistaken, law school is when you got kind of serious about school and applied yourself, right? Because obviously law school is hard. But then you did the MBA as well. Now I'm curious to know, because I don't have an MBA, just have, JD, and I'm scaling your practice. What advantage did that MBA give to you that you feel helped you, right? As we obviously we'll talk about how you started your firm, but that in and of itself, how much of an asset was that to you in the PI space of growing and scaling?
I don't think the MBA is really that valuable if you want to be an entrepreneur. I think the master's in business, the qualifications that you get by getting an MBA is you understand the terminology of business. You understand EBITDA, you understand finances, you understand the difference between marketing and advertising. That's what the MBA provides for you. In terms of entrepreneurial skill, nothing. In terms of true digital marketing and building your business in 2023, 2024 and beyond, nothing. In terms of learning how to hire employees and building your business from scratch, nothing. But learning the synergistic differences between this company and this major company and why a merger worked for these massive conglomerates, you can write a hell of a report on that. So that's what the MBA does for you. But if you want to start your own business, you don't need an MBA. If you want to work for someone and rise up in the ranks, the MBA is helpful because you can carry conversations that most people can't. And so, yeah, when we talk about raising money, when we talk about capital, when we talk about valuations of companies, to be honest, Shark Tank is the new MBA. If you watch every episode of Shark Tank and understand what's actually happening, and then after the episode, go and research that company online and see what happened and see how they, use this marketing and went to market and grew their business, I feel like you'll learn more than you would sitting in an MBA class. Now, for me, my college experience was kind of a joke because I first decided that I wanted to be a medical school student. So I signed up. I wanted to be a doctor. My dad told me I should be a doctor my whole life. And when I went to school and I saw the course catalog and curriculum and saw like bio 1112, bio 1113, bio 2112, I don't want to take all these biology classes. I think there were like 13 different biology classes I had to take. And I just didn't like biology that much. So I dropped out of the pre-med and then went international business. And when I did the international business, because I changed my major halfway through the semester, there's this rule where you have to use a course catalog for the most recent semester that you're on. So I go to the registrar and they tell me, hey, you didn't meet all the criteria. There's actually 1 or 2 classes that you didn't take. So you're not going to graduate this semester. You're not going to get your associate's degree at Dalton State College. You're going to have to stay here for another semester. And I'm like, bullshit, give me the course catalog. So I look at the course catalog and I just cross-reference all the classes that I'd already taken with whatever major fits that criteria. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I became like some sort of generic associate's degree. I took that degree and then moved to Kennesaw State to finish my bachelor's degree in English. So I majored in English and I minored in Spanish and Chinese. And that was my undergraduate experience. The way I chose my classes was I went on ratemyprofessor.com and found what other students were saying about professors. And I chose the easiest classes and I never looked at what the class was actually about. So I did not take college seriously at all. I wanted to get my 4.0 and get out. And somewhere along the line, while I'm in college, I had a store in Town Center Mall. So I'd have a car audio shop. We were consistently selling about 30 grand a month in that car audio shop. So it was a pretty successful business. And I would go to school in the morning, go to my 8 a.m. class, finish at 9:15, just enough time to maybe stop by Starbucks, head over to the mall, open up the shop from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, 12 to 6 on Sunday. That was the work that I did. And somewhere along the line, I just didn't want to be a car audio salesman anymore. And my brother had gone to law school and I thought, like, this guy's studying so much, there's no way I could do what he's doing. But I decided to take the LSAT. I applied. I got accepted. I only applied to 2 schools. I applied to Georgia State and Mercer. Then when I got accepted into Mercer, it was actually in another city. I didn't realize. I just applied. I thought it was in Atlanta. Turns out it was in Macon. I was like, I'm not going to drive 100 miles. So I turned that down. And then Georgia State called me. The director of admissions called me when I was at the car audio shop installing some rims and said, "Hey, congratulations, you got accepted into Georgia State." I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." She's like, "Well, we'd like to offer you a scholarship to go full time," because I had initially applied to the part time program. So I was like, I guess I'm going to clear out my schedule for the next 3 years. And that's how I got into law school.
So that's great, by the way. I mean, so again, arbitraging things, right? Just taking, being curious, leveraging information, right? I see this, hear this from what you're saying. All right, so I'm generally curious. So you got out, and as far as I can see, you were sort of like unemployable. Like when I got to law school, I hung a shingle, no one would hire me. But what did these? I think you applied to 100 law firms, whatever. However, what were these lawyers missing? Were they threatened? Were they intimidated that you would? I don't know. I don't understand what was missing in their eyes. What do you think it was that they missed?
You mean, why did they not hire me?
Yeah.
To be honest, I was probably super arrogant and cocky. Like, all I cared about was how much are you going to pay me? I didn't care about culture. I didn't care about like the workplace culture.
Yeah.
I didn't care about my position in the firm. I'm like, put me in a place where I could work for you 100 hours a week and I can make 200 grand a year. Like, that's all I cared about. It's like, I don't care what I need to do. I just need to make the most amount of money possible. And I will grind my face into the ground to be financially successful. And I interviewed all over the country and all over the world. There was an interview where they flew me out to Dubai. So have I ever told you this story? I don't know. Have you ever heard it?
I think I did, but share it, please.
Okay. So here's a story about how I was interviewed in Dubai for an associate attorney position, and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So I applied to all these different law firms, and because I spoke Arabic, I wanted to take a shot at becoming an international lawyer. So I reached out to this top 5 global firm, sent in my application, sent in my resume, and in other countries, lawyers just have a bachelor's degree, whereas in the United States, it's a doctorate degree. So you have your 4 years of bachelor's plus 3 years to get your JD, whereas everywhere else, it's a bachelor's in law. So I kind of already had that advantage over other people because I'm an American lawyer. I have a lot more education than some of these people. So they flew me to Dubai, put me up in a hotel. When I got there, I realized that the suit that I bought, I had forgotten the clip on it. You know, the clip that you're supposed to keep when they're supposed to take off when you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, to keep you from stealing merchandise. I did not steal the suit, I promise you. But at like 10 p.m. at night, I realized that my suit, I couldn't wear it because it had this big plastic piece on it, this anti-theft device. So I go to the Dubai Mall. I'm walking around everywhere, and I finally found someone and told him, "Hey, I'll pay you $5 if you can take this thing off for me." So that was the suit that I put on. A Lincoln Town car pulls up to my apartment, to my hotel the next morning, and they take me to the interview. And there's a bunch of these other students. Some of them speak Arabic, some of them don't. So I had the opportunity to interview in English and Arabic. And the test was to do a global negotiation between all the members that were there. They wanted to see your ability to negotiate with other students. And they gave you a parameter and said, hey, here's your goal, here's what you need to get, and here's the limit. And essentially, they structured it in such a way where everyone could go to the very edge of what's acceptable, not necessarily a great result, but just an acceptable result. So everyone essentially wins. And I didn't want everyone to win. I wanted me to win. So in my negotiation, I found the weakest person in the negotiation table, and there was a contract term that I would not negotiate on. And so I essentially won the negotiation and beat out the other competitors. And that was the reason they did not hire me, because they said that in this culture of this work, we're looking for people that are team players and can get the job done without necessarily like being overly aggressive. I thought, well, you didn't tell me that. You didn't tell me that. You just want me to be a nice guy and be a pushover. I thought I had to win this negotiation. And so the reason I didn't get hired, and the reason they spent over $5,000 at least flying me to Dubai, putting me in a hotel, driving me over there, feeding me and sending me back. You could have just emailed me and said, hey, we're looking for a pushover and not an aggressive person. And I think that was this was probably interview number 30 or 40 that I'd done. And I think by that point, I realized I can't just work for a typical small firm. I worked at an immigration firm. I worked at a business litigation firm. I'm just not the guy that, as a worker, by the way, as an employee, I just want my performance to be the reason why I'm successful. I want you to see me as the guy that bills the most hours, that gets the most clients, that is just the hardest worker in the room. But I had to learn that the culture of talking to people and being a pleasant person is just as important as your performance. And it took me starting my own company and losing a couple of employees along the way, and building a team, and working as an employee for an attorney's office, being mistreated, and realizing that the culture really does matter. The way people are treated really does matter. The way you make people feel really does matter. The money you make does not matter to everyone else. They don't care about how much you know. They want to know how much you care. And I had to learn that the hard way. And I think if I had had that skill, I probably would have been employed sometime during law school, and probably would have been an associate attorney that became a partner at a major firm. But I guess that's not going to happen. I guess I'm just going to have to start my own firm and become a partner myself.
So, we talk about culture quite a bit. So I've heard you say this: you're in the talent acquisition game, not the client acquisition game. And I think that's progressive, because that's where the magic happens. You get the right people on the bus, you're going to go far, fast, right? Not as fast as we want sometimes, but you're moving forward. So that is a mindset shift I would encourage our listeners to entertain, right? It's not just about like cases, like look at the team, because they are the people who are going to be talking to your clients and treating them either well or treating them poorly. So again, helping people, right? That to me is where the special sauce is. The people on the bus, right? Because the better the people do, the more cases you're going to bring in, referrals, reviews, like the whole flywheel just kind of moves bigger and faster.
Well, I'll give some free game to the people that are on this call, that are listening or watching. Let's say you're an attorney and you want to start a practice, and you have the opportunity to hire an employee. If that employee has the ability to bring in 5 to 10 cases a month, or 5 to 10 cases a year, not a month, they have friends, family, referral partners, things like that, and they're a paralegal, they can bring in cases, work them up, and settle them. That employee is free.
Right.
Because they're bringing in the business and they're doing the work.
Correct.
So you could pay them 50, 80, 100 grand a year and appreciate the fact that they're generating business for you, and reward them by paying them more money. And it doesn't cost you a thing. Now, if all you did was find those rock stars everywhere, and you scooped up every rock star in the city that has the ability to generate cases, generate business, close them on their own, and you paid them more and overpaid what your competition is paying, your employees are going to be free, your business is going to grow, and everyone is going to be happy. The problem is we don't put a value on the business generation aspect of our employees. So we think, well, hey, I just want you to be a case manager or paralegal. You do what I tell you to do, and that's it. And you got to get paid $45,000. I might negotiate to $46,500 if you're really good. But you got to think of it from a business perspective. If I can find people that can bring in business, and I don't have to spend money on advertising, and I can pay this person more and they can help me grow the business, you're winning. So if you're starting your business, I think first you need an assistant that can help you with the low-level tasks, because if anything that can be done for 10, 15, 20 bucks an hour, you shouldn't be doing it as the CEO. But from there, right after that, you should go for a rock star. You should put out a job posting for $100,000 a year for a rock star paralegal and let that person come. And if you can't afford $100,000, you could probably afford 50 or 60. So the way you do that negotiation, when you interview them and you like the candidate, you see that they can bring in business, they know their stuff, you tell them, look, the way we do it here is $60,000 base salary to work here. And then every quarter, if you hit these goals, you get a $10,000 bonus. So let's say you want them to bring in 12 cases a year. You tell them, look, every quarter where you bring in 3 clients, you automatically get a $10,000 bonus. Whatever happens to that case doesn't really matter. That's your KPI. Or if you settle X amount of cases, you'll get a $10,000 bonus. Or if you bring in this much new business, You close out this many cases, you draft this many demands, you get a $10,000 bonus per quarter. And that's how you get the $100,000 compensation package. It's a way to pay people the number that they're looking for without having to come out of it up front and making sure that it's based on their performance. So if you're starting a business, that's what you should do. Get an assistant that can handle all your low-level tasks. From there, find every single rock star that you could possibly find. And there's this sweet spot when you have like 5 to 7 employees and everyone is rowing in the same direction. You don't need directors because you're the director, you're the CEO. You got 5 to 7 people, you can manage them, and you can run a very profitable business that way. You don't need middle management, you don't need HR, you don't even need an intake specialist because you can handle all the signups yourself. You could probably do that with 1 associate, 3 paralegals, 2 case managers, and an office manager, and you're set. And that's an ideal personal injury structure. The only problem is you can't leave for a month and expect the business to still be as profitable. And so there's levels to the game. It's a different level at 7 employees to 15 to 25 to 50 to 100. And a lot of people land in the 50 to 100 range because they realize this is where everything is set and I don't have a reason to grow past this. So I'm happy to talk about that if that's the direction you wanted to take it. But I figured people might find some benefit in how I would structure a firm today.
Yeah, fair. And absolutely, I tell everyone, Ali, you got to get a personal assistant. You shouldn't be, scheduling things and doing, those low-level tasks, right? There's a plethora of people worldwide that would love that opportunity to they like that work and they want to make some go. So in terms of, I'm just curious how your, I don't really want to get into tactics and social media, but just like your approach when you started, it's evolved. And I ask you this because I've just started to lean into it, and people say to me and stuff, you're an ambulance chaser, and what you said once, you're like, thanks for the engagement, right? So I love the hate because you just helped the algorithm push me up. I guess just like that's talking about tactics, whatever you want to talk about, but just your philosophy on social. How has it evolved since you first banged out your first video?
My philosophy on social media is first, people need to know that you exist. Okay. Let's talk about Kim Kardashian. Everyone knows that she's famous. A lot of you don't know why she got famous or how she got famous. You can go as far back as her dad, Robert Kardashian, and the O.J. Simpson trial. You can go down to the famous sex tape, or her marrying Kanye West. You don't know. Something happened along the way where she just kind of became famous. The thing is, she is famous now. With DJ Khaled, for instance, he's one of the music producers. This dude is one of the most illiterate, uneducated, annoying people I've ever seen. But he's famous. How did he get famous? From just yelling "We the best" and being, on songs with major artists. And now we know that he's a major celebrity. We just don't know how he got there. My point is this. You need to make a big enough splash in the beginning where people know your name. And sometimes that means pushing the boundaries of what your competition or your friends, your family, your network might think is respectful or appropriate for your industry. And everyone has a level of risk tolerance. For me, it's just if something can get me potentially more good than bad, 51-49, that's enough for me. A lot of us are playing the 99-1 game. We're like, hey, I'm only willing to take 1% of risk of having a little bit of backlash. And then the aggressive people in your market are doing the 80-20, where they're like, look, I'm going to put out advertisements. I'm standing on a big rig truck, and I say, I'll fight for maximum compensation. You're like, I would never do that. I'm too much of a respectful litigator to do that. You're also broke, sir. That's why. So in the beginning, I would go and withdraw a bunch of cash from the bank, and I would do these raunchy commercials holding a bunch of cash, just waving it and be like, this is $25,000. This is how much you can get in a car accident in Georgia. And this is $750,000. And I'd show a massive bag full of cash. And this is the minimum amount of coverage on a tractor trailer. And I'd go and educate people and use it that way. Now, 2018, 2019 Ali was a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more off the rails. I would do whatever it took to be famous. 2020 Ali started having a lot of life changes. And I turned 30 that year, but I also, my wife got pregnant. I lost my brother-in-law in a tragic car accident. And there was things that hit me in life that year. And I realized that you can go very deep down the rabbit hole of trying to become famous and make a lot of money, but you have to understand that the reason you're doing that is to provide a better life for your family and to hopefully establish a legacy that people are going to respect and honor and your children will appreciate. And I pivoted in 2020 where I just said, I'm going to change this. I'm going to systematize my business to where I'm not the one that's doing the raunchy commercials. I've already done the splash, if you will, in my market. Now it's time to optimize and hire people and grow. And so 2020, I actually sold my apartment complex that year that I'd been sitting on for about 6 years. I took all that money, invested it into my business, went really aggressive in marketing during COVID, started giving out more legal advice videos that the general public would appreciate. And I started really going into my brand of being a CEO lawyer. Um, and yeah, today I'm not so much about making a splash. I'm more about consistent growth. How can I keep my business growing and keep my people happy and enjoy my life? Because I'm in my 30s. I'd like to play this game for another 30 years, and you'll get burnt out if you're just grinding to the wall every single day.
Let me ask you, just pivoting away from social for a second, what's your greatest success in life so far?
My wife, greatest success in my life is my wife. I think that was the best decision I could ever make. Thank God for that every day. I'm not trying to be cheesy, bro.
I
Like
get it. I
I hit
understand.
the jackpot, bro. Like I got very lucky. She saved my life. I was going down a path of destruction mentally in terms of arrogance and ignorance and money hunger and she just showed me a different way. And it's like you can have it all. You really can. You just, it's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. And at some point, you got to make that pivot. You got to know, like, all right, I got my house, I got my cars, I got my safety net, I got my people, I got my team. I want my legacy to be something that people respect, and I want my impact on the world to be positive. And you making $100 million a year is not a positive impact to anyone else but you. You donating $100 million a year, that's an impact.
Yeah, there's such power. My wife is all in on what I'm doing. Right? If I tell her I want to spend $5,000 on an hour-long coaching call, she'll say spend it. She's just like go in. So I'm not where I am today without my strong wife who is there. When I come home, like, oh shit, it's just not going. The growth isn't as fast as I want it to be. So just stay the course. There's such counsel from a strong partner and guidance and affirmation. And so I hear your words when you say that. Let me ask you, when it comes to your business, is there anything that keeps you up at night, just stresses you out the most in particular? There's always something, we know that.
Um, what keeps me up at night? When you've been burned and you've been cheated and lied to enough times in your life, um, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for that person to send you an email and rip out their part in the firm and take everyone with them. You're waiting for that one person to attack you, and you're just hoping that it never happens. But it's there's an element of I think you have to be a little crazy and maybe overly optimistic to continue running a business, because I think some people let the fear kind of drive them or drive them out of being successful. And I just have to remember that my growth is more important than the speed of my problems. As long as I focus more on my growth, doesn't matter what problems come up, I'll figure those out along the way. But my growth has to exceed the value of those problems.
That's fair. That's yeah. Sometimes the shoe dropping, I can relate to that sentiment very strongly. Um, Let me ask you this. Just to be respectful of your time and sort of wrap up in a couple minutes. We talked a lot about your childhood. Do you feel you have a chip on your shoulder, or no? I know I do. I'd like to hear from you. Do you have a chip on your shoulder, or no?
I could go plenty of directions with that, but kind of let me know what you mean by that.
Well, like to me, this is my competitive advantage in my market. I'm in Boston. It's hyper competitive in the PI space. I have this again fire under my ass to just, do because I didn't have, affluent lawyer parents. My mom did a lot, but there's a lot we didn't have, right? Um, but I just feel this chip on my shoulder, like, gonna prove you wrong, gonna, show you, and that's my fuel. It's like my DNA.
Like you mean in business or in family or your life or
No
just in general?
business, no business, kind of like real competitive, and it's just such a. I think that's my advantage, but also a curse. But where do you fall on that?
I think I've met too many idiots that are rich for me to not be one of them. you know, um, and I've also met too many extremely smart, talented, ambitious people that could not be successful and will not be successful because they don't live in the U.S. So there's a couple of chips. Yeah, there's one on each shoulder. There's one realizing that there's a bunch of lawyers that came before me that have built super successful businesses and they're not as good as me. Then there's the other side where there's people that are way better than me that'll never have what I have. And so I think both of those drive me. And I think the one, and you just kind of have to have that renewal of purpose sometimes,
Sure, sure.
for the past couple of weeks, honestly, for the past couple of months, I've just been going in slow motion. I go in ebbs and flows in my business. So I'll go one quarter where I'm super hardcore. I'm involved in every single meeting. I'm involved in the marketing and the intake teams and the litigation meetings and the pre-lit meetings and the hiring meetings and the growth meetings, every single one of our leadership meetings. I'm involved in every single one of them. And then I'll take a couple of months off to see if my business can continue that same momentum and growth because just like a race car, if you're pushing the pedal to the metal the entire time, you're going to burn that engine out. But if you just go and rev it to 9,000 RPMs and just get that acceleration and from there coast, you're going to save the engine over time, but you also can take advantage of the momentum and the speed that you already have. This is a really weird analogy. Okay. Let me see if you can kind of follow me on this. Are you a race car guy? Do you like fast
Not so
cars?
much, to be honest. No,
Not
but
so
I
much.
can go with it.
Okay. Do you ever pay attention to the gas mileage in your car?
Sure.
Okay. So you can't go get metal to the pedal every single day in your business. Just like a race car, you can go super aggressive, get that car to 100, 120, 140 miles an hour, and push it as far as you can, and then let your foot off the gas a little bit to let the momentum push you forward. And what ends up happening is you save the motor from being burnt out and you actually have better gas mileage.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay attention to the gas mileage in your car, if you're always pressing the gas, you won't have the best gas mileage. You might get there at the same amount of time, especially if you go on cruise control, right? If you go on cruise control, the car decides when it wants to press the gas, but the car doesn't know when you're about to go on a hill or not. So you want to accelerate a little bit more when you know you're about to go to a hill so you can coast when you're going downhill. That's how you have the highest gas mileage. And the same way, if you keep the gas to the ground for an extended period of time, you can burn out that engine. Well, the engine is your people. And if you burn out your people, things are just going to start falling apart. The gas mileage is your profitability. So if you continue to push your engine to the absolute max every single day, you're not going to take advantage of the excellent gas mileage and the cruising that you can enjoy when you've finally hit that momentum. And that's how I treat my business. I think I go in ebbs and flows. I'll put all of my effort for one quarter or 6 weeks, 8 weeks in chunks. And then I let my foot off the gas to see how my business can carry that momentum. If my business grinds to a halt within a week, that means that the momentum that I had accumulated was not enough and I need to go back to the drawing board. But what's been happening is I can go hard for a quarter and then I can lay off for another quarter. And it gives my people some time to re-energize, take some time off, recalibrate. We're still going at a fast pace. We're still enjoying the ride, and we can start back up the following quarter. And that's how I think you should run your business if you want the highest level of success without burning out your people.
Yeah, that was a writer downer for me because I'm always going 90 miles an hour. I'll be honest with you, And
You can't do that.
that's transferred to your team. Your team picks up on your energy. I read recently, your team knows if you're in a good mood or a bad mood. It trickles down. So now when I come in, I'm smiling. Even if I'm, in a shitty mood, I'm going to smile because people pick up on that stuff. And they pick up on the fact that my hair's, again, my hair's on fire, going 90 miles an hour down the freeway. I'm gonna pump the brakes. So I appreciate it. That's definitely a useful lesson. I hope people really
How many employees do you have?
14 right now.
And you work in the office, right?
Yes. Well, we're hybrid. Yes.
So we have 70, 80 employees right now, and we're virtual. And so the first 15 employees, I would say, those people saw the real hardcore CEO lawyer, Ali. They saw the person that was putting in 12, 14-hour work days every single day, the person that is reviewing reports and figuring out how to improve and grow the business at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., the person that doesn't matter if I'm on my honeymoon, on my anniversary, it doesn't matter. I am working. Okay. And I realized that, so those are some of my core people. Those people, they're my ride or die. They've been with me from the very beginning. I'm going to take care of them forever. But I also don't want to burn them out. And I also realize it's a special type of person because not everyone stayed with me. Only a select few people stayed with me from the very beginning. And those are the people that really believe in me. They believe in my vision. And they've seen the hardcore version of me. But the new generation, the batch of people that came in probably after my 25th or 30th employee, those people have seen the refined, level-headed Ali, the business person that understands building the culture, taking care of your people, leveraging your resources to make it an enjoyable experience for people. And they might not have been pushed so much like my initial group of people. And the longevity of the second batch is much higher than the first batch.
Right.
So
right.
I would just caution you on, try not to burn the good people out too early, because you're going to outlast everyone because it is your business. But your goal is to get as many of your high quality people to last with you. And you made a point earlier that said, hey, people can tell when I'm in a bad mood or my hair's on fire or whatever. With me, they usually can't because I work from home. And so the few meetings that we have a stand-up meeting here in a little bit. I'm going to come in with the energy. I'm going to come in hot every single time because they only see my face a couple of hours throughout the week. And I have to give them the absolute best. So they associate me with this positive, ambitious, energetic person because that's all they see. Same thing on social media. They see this positive, ambitious, super driven person. Sure. But my leadership team sees the other aspects of me. They see, man, this guy's struggling. This guy's actually working hard. Here's the things that he's going through. They see the vulnerability. And I share some vulnerability with the rest of my team. But if I'm pushing them like the rest of the team every single day, I feel like people would start falling off.
Yeah, fair.
And
I think that's smart. That's fair. That's really helpful for me. So thank you. So I know we're running out of time. I just want to say that I want to plug your CEO Lawyer Summit. I went in 2021. I think it was Jesse Itzler, right?
Yeah.
And so you talked on stage about you did a picture, you posted on social media your story, right? And it was like your first post. It's like it was like your story, right?
Yeah.
And so that night, I went to my hotel room. I wrote my story. Social media blew up. Chris, I had no idea about this. So I encourage anyone on the call, lean into your story, because how are you different from the lawyer down the street? Why should they hire you? You want affinity, right? So that was well worth the price of admission. I would really encourage everyone to check out CEO Lawyer Summit. It's jam-packed with value. I mean, that to me is worth like millions of dollars, man. Like that thing, because it changed the whole perspective. So your summit, I mean, that was really good. So people should go to that, man. That must be
I appreciate that, man.
No, of course.
Well, so this year on this whole work-life balance thing, this year I'm not doing a summit. Next year will probably be the last CEO Lawyer Summit. So 2024 CEO Lawyer Summit will probably be the last one because I just had a baby, a second one recently, and I want to be around. I don't want to miss a single milestone. On the 2021 summit, my wife texted me that my first son's baby teeth came in while I was on stage, and I didn't miss any other milestone, but I feel like that's something I should have been there for. And the summit is a huge, huge event for me. We had over 500 lawyers attend last time. For the last one we do in 2024, maybe I'll try to have 1,000 people, and I'd love to have you attend too, man. Love to have your support. But I think I want to do one last hurrah to kind of like show people the evolution of, here's where we started, here's where we're going, and here's what I'm going to leave you all with. The CEO lawyer that I was in 2018, 2019 is not the same one you're going to see in 2024. I think that I can consistently grow my business at 50 to 100% per year systematically and enjoy the ride versus doing, pushing at 120 or 150% and having people and things and systems break. And I think I want to leave people with more of a legacy and something that they can leave long-term in their business, in their lives. And so we're going to have some special surprises for our last summit. It's going to be very different.
That's awesome. That's great to have your priorities straight at such a young age, right? You can't get those moments back with the kids, man. That's what it's all about, frankly. For me, for you, this is it's not about work, it's about lifestyle, it's about family, it's about doing something big.
How many kids do you have?
I have two, man. So you're in the 2-kid club. Everything changes. It's
Yeah.
it's more of everything, man.
Yeah, they say one kid makes you parents, 2 kids makes you a family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gets easier. Everyone's sleeping more soon. You can have conversations in a couple of years, like, really insightful stuff. We're playing on the baseball team now, dancing. It's my life, man. It's the best. So I'm excited for you. So awesome job, man. I'm really impressed. So that's all I have. I just want to say, thank you so much for being on the show. It means a lot. Thanks for carving out the time. I know I got a ton of value. I know everyone else got a ton of value. So that's it for this episode of The Earley Show. Be sure to check out more episodes for our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Answering Legal YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ali.
Thanks, Chris.